Maybe let's just do a quick check to make sure that everybody can hear me. Sean, you can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. How about Denise?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, thank you. Kenny?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. Genelise?
Good morning.
Good morning. How about Zach?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, how about Eddie?
Yep.
Good. Bridget?
Good morning.
Good morning. And how about Rosie?
Morning.
Good morning. I think it's everybody, right? I'm not missing anybody who's on the list. I don't think. Okay, let's start with a couple folks in class wanted me to go over the homework from last time. This is great because some of this conceptual information is probably going to help you on the test. I've had a couple people who've already taken it. You know, you have until tomorrow to do so. I also see that I think there were 17 views on the YouTube thing that I put together, the review piece that I put together. So that's good. I'm happy that people are watching that. That gives people quite a clue as to what they should sort of prepare for. Speaking of those sorts of things, the final is going to be done in the same way. Not Monday, but a week from Monday, I will put up the final, meaning I'll put the final out and available, and it'll be due Thursday by 12:15 p.m. That means 12:15 after noon, not middle of the night, 12:15. All right, so you will have a couple of days for that as well. Next week, there will be two things. There will be a review session for that. Again, I'll make a Zoom review session, but I'll create an MP4 and send it over to YouTube because I know some people have had difficulty accessing things on Canvas, and I figure as opposed to keep sending people through these hoops, I'll just go through that other process. So you're able to look at it two different ways, same thing. And then I'm also going to make available to everybody the past quizzes, because you know it'll be an amalgamation of that information plus some of the longer sort of stuff that we did in class as well. Mostly conceptual, I guess, but you know, as you've seen, you have to do formulas in order to get to the final piece. So let's go through this homework, I think relatively quickly, unless people have questions. So you have to tell me if you have questions in certain areas. This first Excel spreadsheet really was just about everybody. It was about practicing the formula for average daily rate, occupancy percentage, and RevPAR, right? For two different properties. Did anybody have any difficulty with that part? I'm assuming no, but that doesn't mean that you didn't. Sometimes when there's all sorts of numbers, I get kind of confused myself just because there's so many columns and rows.
So I got everything right. The only thing I got wrong was the 5-day total.
Yeah. This goes back to our idea of, are we going to do a weighted or a non-weighted average, right? And we said that typically we want to use a non-weighted average where we use the total numbers to get our ADR, our occupancy, and our RevPAR, that row rather that I highlighted right there. As opposed to taking our ADR from Monday plus Tuesday plus Wednesday plus Thursday plus Friday and then dividing that total by 5. That is a non-weighted average, but typically when we're looking at a short chunk of time like this, we like to use, that would have been a weighted average. This could give us a non-weighted average by taking the totals of each column as opposed to averaging each day of the week together. Does that answer your question?
No, because like, for example, like for percentage, like
Yeah.
I got a crazy number. Like,
okay, so what did you use for your formula? Because remember, for 5 days, we have a potential of selling 250 rooms each night for 5 days, right? So our potential occupancy isn't 250, it's 250 times 5.
oh, you see, that's when I did. Okay.
Yep. You know, sometimes when we're looking at these things, we have to think in room nights, not total rooms. Like if a guest comes and purchases 5 rooms for 4 nights, they have purchased from you 20 room nights. So we think about it in those units. That help?
Yes, Joe.
Cool, cool, cool. And these things, you know, I asked you just to put in certain numbers, just to lead you to a conclusion. The conclusion here is different hotels have different business models. And it's not just hotels, it's any business. Different businesses have different business models. We call it occupancy versus ADR, coming up with a RevPAR. I lower the prices, I sell more. I raise my prices, I sell fewer, but I can come up with the same amount of total revenue or a measurement like RevPAR in order to do that. So different hotels do things differently. So some hotels achieve some businesses, but specifically hotels achieve their revenue by selling more for less, and others sell fewer for more. There are just two, and look, there's all variances in here as well. The perfect property sells the most rooms at the highest possible rate, right? But there are times when we're gonna have to play with this back and forth, back and forth. We have to think about that all the time. Whenever we're lowering our price, we're doing it in order to raise occupancy, right? Volume and price gives us revenue. So really the concept here is any business is always walking a tightrope between how low am I able to lower my prices to and still have a volume that raises up high enough to make up for the money I'm losing by lowering the price of each. If I lower my price, I want to sell enough more items, whatever it is, to make up for that loss I've created by selling each one for a lower price. This is where elasticity comes involved too, right? A very elastic item is an item that if I raise the price just a little bit, my occupancy will drop very, very heavily. Or if I lower my price just a little bit, the number sold, in this case, occupancy is gonna go through the roof, right? Elastic items are very price sensitive, high and low. If I have an inelastic item, I can raise and lower the price quite a bit, and it doesn't affect the volume sold. So once you know whether or not you have a elastic item or an inelastic item, once you know if you have an elastic item or an inelastic item, then you have a lot more leeway as to how much you can play with the pricing. But every time I lower the price, it's a gamble. Am I going to sell enough more of the product to make up for the loss I'm taking for lowering the price, and vice versa? That's what the concept of this first one was. The second one really was just a discussion of ADR to net ADR. ADR means the rack rate, what I feel is the market price for an item, and then the net ADR is the amount I actually get for that item after I pay out commissions or fees to third-party sellers. I often have to deal with third-party sellers because in this case, right? Let's take a look at this one together. We have a third-party internet sales provider like Expedia, or a 1-800 number for my franchise company, or travel agents might sell my product as well. And they sell them for, I've sold them to these different groups at different prices because I know that I price differently for different demographics, and I know different demographics are willing to pay different prices for the same item. I just know that to be true. Okay, so I sell things, I put a rack rate or a room rate in this case on certain items, but I sell them through third parties because I cannot depend on everybody either calling my place directly or walking in and booking a room. I need the assistance of other groups. Every time I do this, I have to pay a fee of some sort. Sometimes it's a percentage in a commission, or sometimes it's a flat rate fee, and any way you look at it, I come up with a regular rate, in this case ADR, and then my net ADR, that actual absolute amount I have after the fees are taken, and then I have a net ADR yield, which is the percentage of that 100% I achieved by selling it this way as opposed to that way. Again, the whole concept here is I'm walking a tightrope every time, because essentially I'm discounting these rooms. right? Every time I sell a room through a third-party seller, it is so I can sell a higher volume of rooms. Again, lots of businesses do this. I don't want us to think it's hotel necessarily specific, though it works with hotels.
Joe, can you let me see which formula did you use for the net ADR?
Yeah, sure.
'Cause I think
Got it? Almost every time you do a ratio formula like this, in any business statistical method, it is always and look, this is kind of a kindergarten way to look at it, but I'm not great at math, frankly. I think I'm quite good at accounting, but I'm not great at math. I always think little number over big number. Little number over big number. And it almost always, except with elasticity, is going to get you the right answer when you're looking for a percentage. Part over the whole. Part over the whole. Sometimes people think about it in some statistical things. I find it easier to say little number over big number. In this case, I am saying my net ADR yield, right? My net ADR yield, and I'm quite sure this is in the PowerPoint, this formula, is simply how much did I get for the room divided by what was the potential, what was I originally asking for the room, price-wise.
Joe, I meant the other one, the net ADR, not the yield.
Oh, right here?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just my room rate minus my fees.
Oh.
Yeah, net, anytime you see the word net, sorry, Rosie, anytime you see the word net, it simply means that final number after some expenses have been taken out, right? Remember we had our, like our food cost, and then our net food cost was our food cost minus the amount we transfer out because we paid for employee meals or something. It is, or we have our profit and then our net profit. We say, what's our profit? We're like, all right, we're doing pretty good. And then our net profit is actually that profit minus the expenses associated with it. So anytime you see net, you know that it is the final amount after you take your original revenue, in this case, the room rate, and subtract the expenses associated with it, which is the fees. So ADR just means your ADR minus the fees associated with that ADR. Cool? So it's just room rate minus fees gives me my net ADR. Okay? And the idea here is, look, again, it's a tightrope. Anytime we're discounting, anytime we're allowing these third-party sellers to actually sell our rooms, it is because we have what we call distressed rooms or distressed product. Product that we know is not going to sell otherwise. So we create contracts with third-party sellers in order to do it. Now look, again, it's a tightrope. If we have these third-party sellers allowed to sell too many of our rooms, then we're not making as much money as we should. We would love to sell plenty of rooms right through the property itself, through walk-ins. We just know that's not true. So we give a certain number, a certain percentage of our rooms. We allow these third-party people to sell our rooms for us because we know not everybody's just going to walk in off the street and buy them from us. But I don't want to just open the floodgates and let everybody sell everything for me. Got it? Tightrope. And every property, every business is going to be different in that sense. Question 3, I think that was super easy. It's simply a formula of flow through, right? In this case, just a little over 59% flowed through. And it was a very simple formula that was listed in the PowerPoint. We simply take last year's revenue or last year's gross operating profit. Let's start with revenue. This year's revenue minus last year's revenue, find out the absolute change there, and do a division with this year's gross operating profit, subtracting last year's gross operating profit. And I want to see how much of that new revenue turned into gross operating profit. If it's over 50%, you're doing good. But here is the part that I want you to think about. Look at our total revenue last year, right? Our total revenue last year was $545,000. We know that at $545,000, we were still able, look at the gross operating profit, we were able to pay for all our all our expenses and still have some money left over. Then the point being, gosh, I made even more than, if I could do that at 545,000, some of that 545,000 went to pay for variable costs. Some of it went to pay for fixed costs, right? Well, at some point, I've made enough revenue that all my fixed costs are paid for. They're not going to go up, right? Even if I'm busier next year than I was this year, my fixed costs aren't going to go up. So after a certain point, any revenue I get, no longer, a portion of that no longer has to go to fixed costs, because those have already been paid, no matter how busy I am, no matter how much revenue I bring in. So a portion of it doesn't have to go there at all. Obviously, once I get all my fixed costs paid for, any revenue I make past that point should stay with me right to the bottom line, because there are fewer costs associated with that new revenue. And we're saying that if you can, of the new revenue you make over a prior year, if you can keep at least 50% of it all the way in what we call flow through, 50%, in this case 59% was achieved, you're doing all right. But remember, as we get busier, sometimes we get sloppy, right? Our inventory gets out of whack. We allow people to steal from us. We have food going bad. We are depending on overtime, which increases our payroll, time and a half. Suddenly, our guest service drops and we have to provide a complimentary product. All these sorts of things can happen, and it eats away at that new revenue and ultimately affects our flow through. That was this one. And then we had some scenarios here, right? We had some scenarios here. Just remember, and I'll look at these individually with people unless you have, meaning your own, unless you have specific questions, but just know that I wanted you to think about the idea of a few things. Of raising and lowering prices for a future date, depending on the popularity of that future date today. Straight up supply and demand, right? That's one. We take a look at that. We can look at the idea of minimum stays for any of these scenarios. These are the things I want you to think about. A minimum stay, if I want to take advantage of, for instance, in this second scenario. Where am I? What am I doing? There it is. In scenario one, I have one night that is at 106%. I'm already 6% overbooked. The next night is only at 73%. The prior night is only at 65%. So many people want to be with us on April 10th that I can afford to make them stay with me on April 9th or on April 11th, right? Put a two-night minimum stay in place. You can stay Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday, right? That's what we should have done. At this point, we're sort of screwed, aren't we? We've already overbooked one night, and we have this thing that we call holes. Often a very busy time period has holes on either side. This can be done with a lot of different businesses that work on a reservation system, or even early purchase of product. We have to get people to spend their money where we want them to spend it. If we noticed early on that April 10th was going to be a huge triple sellout, then April 9th or April 11th should have been sold as a necessary component. You can stay 2 nights here or 2 nights here, but if you want to stay here, you have to pick up one of the other nights. Because now nobody's going to stay Monday or just Wednesday. Right? So we have minimum stays. We might have what is called a no arrival date, right? It's another way of doing what we're talking about. Nobody gets to arrive on Tuesday, April 10th. You can arrive on any other day, but if you want to stay on Tuesday, April 10th, you can't arrive that day, but you can stay as a stayover on that day. Another way of creating a situation where people must purchase adjacent days. So much of it is manipulation of pricing, but other times we put specific stipulations in place to fill in blank areas. And that's that. And that's that. I want to go over one other thing as well. Give me a second while I open that up, if you would. I'm all alone in the classroom today. It's completely ridiculous that I'm standing here I understand if there's a snowstorm, I guess, but I still feel stupid. Okay. In just a second, I'm going to open up some stuff on balance sheet, and then we'll continue with that. So that same balance sheet that we were working on the other day, we're going to continue on that, hopefully.
Joe, quick question. Can I resubmit this homework or no?
You can, yeah. Why? Because you want to correct a few things, then resubmit it?
Yeah. 'Cause I
Yeah,
did it wrong.
you could, though, at this point, like, feel free to do that and I'll take a look at it for sure. But it's probably, as far as the final grade occurs, it's not going to change it a great deal, I would imagine. Do you know what I mean? So it's up to you. I'm happy to do it, but you see what I'm saying. Cool? That answer the question, or is that just blabber? I hope it answers the question. I'm going to catch us up here. So all we did is we took things from up top and put them down here, and I explained them as we went. There are some things that were important to think about as we go here. We talked about the idea of assets, in this case, current assets, and how some of them were more liquid than others. Liquid means how easily can they turn into real usable cash? And we list them on our current asset sheet from, you know what? I'm not showing this to you. Why am I such a knucklehead half the time? The other half of the time, I'm brilliant. Right, I'm just bringing stuff up from the top down here, and like last time we talked about it, right? So here we have our current assets there. I'm going to change our floating piece to here. So those are our, hopefully, this will all work out as we go. Those are our current assets, right? Things like inventory. You know, you can say, look at all the assets I have, but if all your assets are in inventory and you don't have much cash in the bank, then you have a lot of stuff, but who cares? You can't spend inventory. Right? Same thing with net receivables. Net receivables is the money you're waiting for, right? Certain groups or demographics, or and this is with any business, are going to, you're going to give them the opportunity to take some time to pay you. Again, this should be investments, not inventory. I'm going to go ahead and change that. Investments, sometimes one company actually invests in another company. And that's what we're talking about with these investment fees. And then what we have, our property and our equipment and all those sorts of things, those are our long-term assets, those things that we are not going to go through in a year. Obviously, your land, your building, your furniture, fixture, and equipment, all those sorts of things you're not going to go through in a year. So we'll bring those down too. So I'm hoping you're doing the same thing or did the same thing last week as I'm doing it here, because, well, because as we look at it, it's going to make a lot more sense if you're able to look at it that way. Furniture. And furniture, fixture, and equipment is just everything in there as well, right? All the stuff from the countertops to the light fixtures to any machinery, all that sort of stuff. Remember one thing about accumulated depreciation, it is an asset, but it's what we call a contra asset. And a contra asset means that it's an asset that actually counts against the other assets. It is the amount that you've, it's the amount that you have used up of all these property, building, furniture, fixture, and equipment. As we use stuff, it becomes less, there we go. It becomes less valuable, right? I mean, that's no surprise, but we have to sort of subtract that or discount the value of items as we move through. So just remember that, and I put less here just to remind you, our accumulated depreciation is always going to be subtracted from our total asset. It says, here's how much all the assets were worth when I bought them, minus, now they're a little beat up. So that should be there. And then we have some other assets that don't fall into either. I'll give you some examples of that. Those are things like, contracts or leases or the rights to a name, those sorts of things. They're not real, right? They're not physical. So we put those in there as well. So our total assets obviously are our total current assets plus our investments. This is all the stuff. This is the worth of our company in dollars. $11,800,000 is how much this company is worth. But we talked about it last week that just because I have all this stuff, it doesn't mean all this stuff is truly mine. And that's where my liabilities come into play. Anybody who's ever had a car payment or understands the idea of a car payment, you say, I own a car. You don't own a car. The bank owns most of that car. You own a little bit of that car, and every month you own a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. But in your personal assets, you have a $25,000 car. You might have only paid the bank back $10,000 of it so far. So you say, I have a $25,000 car on the left side, on the asset side, and I have a 15,000. So 10,000 of it is here. 15,000 of it lands over in liabilities. Altogether, I got a $15,000 car. So I will say plus on the asset side minus the 15,000 I still owe on the liability side. So I own a car as far as an asset goes, but that doesn't mean you own it. Vocabulary, right? So we have things like accounts payable. Accounts payable are those things, bills that I have piling up on my desk as we go, right? So look here, I've got $500,000 in cash. Sounds pretty good until I realize, oh, over on the other side, all that money is spoken for, right? $1.4 million is spoken for there. But that's okay because I've got 2.6 million that I'm waiting for, right? And so little by little, the money keeps moving. I've got some in cash, others in net receivable every day. I'm assuming that checks are coming in from people who are paying their bills that I've sent out beforehand. So I can then pay for my bills over here in accounts payable. But I can't believe that I'm rich just because I've got all these assets. A lot of that money is already spoken for. Notes payable is a short-term loan of some sort. A long-term loan would go into here under long-term liability, but this is just current liabilities, things that would be paid off within a year. And then I have my other current liabilities. And so total current liabilities are just all these. You know, if you have any question about what any of these are, I'm just going through it quickly because we talked about it last time as well. Our long-term liability, our long-term debt is exactly that. I have $1.8 million in long-term debt that is going to it's going to take me quite a long time to pay off. So little by little, I will see that. And there you go. So my total liabilities, as you can imagine, are my total current liabilities plus my long-term debt, or my my long-term liabilities there. And then I have my my owner's equity. How much did the owners themselves put into this? So we're not really, because in the managerial accounting level that we're talking about here, that you're doing, we're not going to talk a great deal about common stock and paid-in capital, but we simply know that if we have a corporation, that in order to raise money, we have sold stock, right? Stock is a part of our company. We've divided into portions, we call those stocks, and then we sell them, and that gives us capital in order to invest in the company and make it larger. So our common stock is how many stocks we sold and at what price. Common stock is how much of our company did other people purchase. They're now eligible for part of our profit, right? But that's what our common stock is. So let's take a look at our common stock. In this case, we have $750,000 in common stock. And as we know, stock goes up and down in value, right? So your paid-in capital is simply the difference between how much you sold your stock for, subtracted from how much it is now worth on the open market. Because you know you buy stock at this price and you can resell it in the future at this price, because or down. Let's pretend everything goes up. That it may go up, right? The value of that piece of a business that you've purchased may go up. So paid-in capital is that difference between what you sold it at and what it's worth now. In this case, our paid-in capital. And I'm not going to test you on that in any manner. Because at this level, this 200 level of managerial accounting, we're not getting into that. That's accounting 3 or 4, which I'm assuming most of you will never touch. And then retained earnings is this running tally that we keep of a company since its inception. Year one, I lost money. Year two, I lost year money. And year three, I lost money. Then I made money. Then I made money. Then I lost a little. Then I made some. Then I made some. All those additions and subtractions are brought together, and I call that retained earnings. So it's not real money. It's not real cash. It's just how this business did with the profits and losses since the beginning of its inception, from the time it was incorporated, most likely. So my total owner's equity is exactly that, the owner's equity. And hopefully this plus this equals this, because both sides need to match. I'm always scared that I put in a wrong number. This is the big, hey, that's exactly right. Good. So we understand that this is basically tells me how healthy, monetarily healthy my company is. And I can take a look at a lot of things and say, what do I have in assets? All right, good. But how much of those assets are liquid in case cash? I'm gonna have you do together and alone a little bit of manipulation today on these, because I want you to see that this is a snapshot of one particular day in the life of a company. I want to know, so like I could look at the beginning of the year and the end of the year and see if my net receivables has gone up a great deal, right? And that might trigger me to think something's weird. Or what if my inventory keeps growing, but my cash keeps dropping? I might think to myself, I'm using a lot of my cash to buy inventory. Do I need all that inventory right now? If my accounts payable go way down and my cash is going way down, I might think to myself, oof, can I hold back on paying some of those bills even for a month until somebody pays me the bills that they owe me? Because I want some cash, I want a little buffer, right? But if I'm spending on my cash to pay for my bills earlier than I need to, not good. So there are different ways we'll look at this, not only today, but next week as well, in preparation for a final exam that'll have a little bit of balance sheet information on it and a little smattering from the other tests as well. Cool. Does anybody have any questions on just this aspect of it, the idea that each of these accounts means something different, and they basically tell us something about the health of our place? This tells you how much is this company worth and how healthy is it? Because you might just say, look at my assets. I've got $11,800,000 worth of assets, but half of it, look at my total liabilities, half of it is already spoken for, right? 3.3 million of it is bills on my desk, stuff I have to pay. So don't feel so good about the 11 million. 3 million is already spoken for, right? And 1.8, that's going to eat away at it overall as well. Just think about the first time you got a paycheck, right? And you're like, I'm rich, look at all this money. And then you start reading all the way down, and the taxes and all that stuff's taken out. Then you go, that's all right, I've still got whatever, 700 bucks, 700 bucks. But then you think, yeah, but this is coming due, this is coming due, this is coming due. Your paycheck is already spoken for. Same thing with your assets here. You're only rich if your liabilities aren't already knocking at the door for those assets. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's do an exercise. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I'm going to ask you to open something up here. And on Canvas, it reads in-class balance sheet. See that? In-class balance sheet. So go ahead and open that up. I'm really going to ask you to, I know some people are like, I just want to watch, I'll just have this on while I'm doing things I want to do. Please just do it. Then you can say you know how to do it, and you will have done it. Might as well do it now. You have to learn it. So that that piece that I just, come on. Let's take a look at that in-class balance sheet together. So here it is, right? Is this the one? Yes. So we have a balance sheet. Everybody can see this, I imagine. We have a balance sheet here, and you look at it on your own, or I don't know what it's like to look at this on a laptop. I'm trying to figure it out. You can look here, have two windows open, and then flick over to your own, because I'm going to show you something, then you're going to do it on your own, give you a couple minutes, and I'll show you how it looks here. But here's an original balance sheet, right? It has our current assets here. It has some investments. It should look familiar. It has my long-term assets, my other assets, and a total. Over here are my liabilities and my long-term liabilities, and then my owner's equity. And then my total liabilities and owner's equity is exactly that, my total liabilities plus my owner's equity. Notice that they match. Great. Every time any transaction happens, my balance sheet has to reflect that and have both sides, once again, match. So let's take a look at this first question. Change the balance sheet below. It's an exact replica of the one above, and it should be built that as you make changes, it will automatically populate the totals for you. The company received a payment for services in the amount of $2,100, which is good. Genelise, tell me. You're there, Genelise, yeah?
I'm sorry, Joe. I couldn't really hear you. Can you repeat
That's
that?
okay. Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to ask you a question now. So in this, by the way, do you have the in-class balance sheet Excel open?
Yes, I do.
Cool. And you can see what I'm looking at, yeah?
Yes.
Good. So I just want us to see how on a day-to-day basis, how the balance sheet changes, yeah? So in this case, the company received a payment for services in the amount of $2,100. So how will this balance sheet look different after that activity has occurred? Remember, there's all sorts of activity occurring in your business every day. I'm taking just one small transaction, and we're going to track it through the balance sheet. So that $2,100, generally, as you just received a check for $2,100 from one of your clients, where do you put that money?
Wouldn't that go in cash?
Yeah, exactly. So this equals my cash plus $2,100. That makes sense to everybody? Go ahead and do that, everybody. However, generally, look, the bottom is now out of whack, right? You see that? My total assets and my total liabilities no longer match. Where else should I have accounted for that $2,100? That $2,100. Which?
Would it be
Go ahead.
accounts?
Say it again.
Because we have to accounts payable, because we have to like cash the check.
No, because we didn't pay anybody, right? Did somebody pay us?
Yes.
So we received the money.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you see how it came out of here and went into here? Does that make sense? Our net receivables is going to drop now because I received 2,100 of it. Does that make sense? So my 80,000 minus 2,100, my accounts receivable are now 77,900 because it went from receivables, where I was like, where's my money, to, oh, there's my money. Let me put it in the bank. My cash goes up, my receivables go down. Cool?
Yeah.
And it matches. Nice work. So we get the idea, because I want you, one thing you have to really do with balance sheet is to understand how the interrelation happens, how things move from one account to another account. Let's take a look at this one. The company paid bills in the amount of $18,250 and paid their monthly mortgage of $11,750. So, Zach, what happens here? What accounts are going to be affected by these numbers, please?
Oh, just 1 second.
Yes, sir. So again, my assumption is everybody's working along with me. I'm all alone in a room.
So the amount paid in bills,
Yep.
would that be taken out of the accounts payable?
My accounts payable would go down, right? Because I'm paying some of my bills, so that would go down, absolutely. So that would equal 142,439 minus 18250. Does everybody understand that? We're simply saying that some of my accounts payable have been paid off by me, so now that amount is down. So next time I look at this, oops. Next time I look at my balance sheet tomorrow, my accounts payable will have dropped. How about my monthly mortgage?
Would that come out of the long-term debt?
Yeah, that would come out of long-term debt, exactly. Now, Zach, I'll tell you, sometimes there is a current liability account that says this year's portion of long-term debt, but in this case, that doesn't exist, so you're exactly right. So this would equal my long-term debt minus 11,750. So that is now 206,522. Unfortunately, we don't match any longer, do we?
No.
What do? Where'd you get all this money to pay these bills? What account, I should say.
Cash?
Yeah, exactly. We use cash to pay those things, right? We think cash, but you know, you're not putting out cash. You're writing checks, right? Or maybe doing a bank transfer, but it's all cash. It's what we still call a cash account. So that has to drop by those amounts, right? Drop by 18,250, and I'm subtracting again. Drop by this as well. So really now my cash is at 27,317. I used my cash in order to pay these bills. So some of my liabilities went down, but my cash went down also. So if I show somebody let's see if that works. It worked. So if somebody, if I showed you a balance sheet from one time period to another, sometimes you really should be able to track what occurred. And when cash goes down, I better see some other things going up on the left side or things going down on the right side. What did I use my cash for if it's gone? Good, thanks, Zach. Cool. So, Sean, how about this one? We have the company brought in revenue the night before of 3,680 and received a liquor order of 3,250. How would those two things affect my, excuse me, I almost gave away the answer, my balance sheet, Sean? You there, Sean?
All right, yeah.
Okay.
So for your liquor order, your inventory is going to go up by that amount, and
Yeah,
then your
exactly.
accounts payable is going to go up by that amount.
Gotcha. So let's go ahead and do that, right? My liquor order comes in, it goes into inventory. So it's this much plus 3,250 more. So my inventory is now at 37,795. Absolutely. And then you said also my accounts payable will go up by that amount as well. Sean, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Yep, you're exactly right. Because I owe this, plus I owe my liquor order now of 3,250. Gotcha. So, yep, and right, our assets equal the other, so we know that we have placed it, at least a balance. We're not always sure that we put them in the right account, but we know that it still balances out, which is good. How about that revenue? How about that revenue of 3,680 from the night before? Where's that money gonna go, Sean?
Your receivables go up, or is that cash?
No, exactly. No, we actually, we're thinking of all this as cash revenue. This is like cash from the till, you know?
All right, yeah. Your
So you
cash
just put it
go
in
up.
cash? So we put that right in the bank?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, you're exactly right, Sean. If some of that revenue was in the form of, people that I have like contracts with where I bill them on a monthly basis, then some of it would go in my cash account, some of it would drop into my net receivables account. But let's just say it's all cash for sake of ease here. But we no longer balance at the bottom, right? Where must that money go also to make this balance at the bottom?
Would it be owner's equity?
Actually, in this case, it's retained earnings, right? It's
Okay.
the additional amount that I have. And then we keep a running tally, many businesses keep a running tally of that retained earnings all the time. How much do I have? How much do I not have? Back and forth, back and forth. And then it's constantly calculated. And we're back to even. All right, take a second and do this one on your own. And everybody try it at least, because I'm going to call on somebody to see whether or not it works. So one of the company's marketable securities came to maturity in the amount of $22,680. Remember, a marketable security is a short-term investment you make usually with a bank, right? And when you make that investment with the bank, it's usually for 3 months, 6 month, 9 month time period. And then at the end of that time period, the money comes back to you with possibly a little bit of interest, right? So in this case, one of our marketable securities came back to us at $22,680. So think to yourself, we know that 2 accounts are going to be affected by this, and which 2 are they? So just take a minute and see if you can figure that out. So I'm hoping that you said to yourself, well, it's going to come out of marketable securities because, well, it says right in the thing, right? That's where it comes out of. It came due and came back to us, and we're going to put it in our cash account, and then we have access to it in order to pay bills or buy stuff or whatever it is we want to do with it. One last one. So the company took out a short-term loan. Remember, there's a specific vocabulary we use for a short-term loan, something that we're going to pay back within a year. We took out a short-term loan of $10,250 to purchase additional tables and chairs that will let them serve more people in the bar during busy time periods. Good idea. Just get, probably room for another 20 people. But that certainly helps because we can only make money when we can make money. We can't tell people to wait forever. So having said that, Denise, you out there for me?
Yes.
Cool. So the company took out a short-term loan of $10,250. Where do you think that $10,250 loan would land? What account?
I think it's a liability.
definitely a liability. Short term. So does that tell you that it's a current liability or a long-term liability?
It's a current liability.
Good. And of those, which one do you think it is? Accounts payable, notes payable, or other current liabilities?
Uh, hmm, I'm honestly not sure. I would say it's a different liability, like the other current liabilities.
Nope, it's that's okay. Another term for a short-term loan is a note. It's an old-fashioned term that we still use. I mean, it's old-fashioned. It's from like the 1600s, but we still use it today. When you pay a note as opposed to a loan, a note is typically through a bank, and it is short-term in nature. So, should my notes payable increase or decrease, Denise?
It should increase because you
That-
owe loan.
You're exactly right. It was 10,250, right? Not nuts. Yep. Well, I could be nuts, I guess. So my notes payable goes up, but I'm out of whack, right? These two don't match any longer. Where am I going to put the $10,250 worth of tables and chairs? Where would that land? Would you call tables and chairs an asset, a thing that the company owns?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So which of these? So now we're on the asset side. Yeah. So over on the asset side, what account? Where would that land in? Do you think? Take a look at all of them.
I guess the furnitures and equipment.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It just adds to our FF&E, right? Fixtures, furniture, and equipment, because it's going to be around for a while. It's not a current asset. Hopefully, these things are going to last us longer than a year. So I would put it. I would put it there. 215, 806. And then as we are able to, hopefully, do we match? Yeah, we match. So we know typically that we are at least on the right track if our assets and total liabilities and owner equity match, which is good. So that part is good news. And hopefully on further inspection, it will be true. But what this does is, if I look at my my balance sheet at different time periods, at the end of a quarter possibly, or at a year's end, and I compare it to earlier versions of it, it gives me an idea of one thing: what happened between this time period and this time period, right? How did my worth switch around between the amount I owe to others, or the amount people owe to me, or the amount I'm actually completely in possession of, which is important. There are certain line items that I would keep a specific eye on, right? And those are the amount of money that I'm waiting for, the amount of money that I'm building up short-term and long-term debt with when I compare it to my cash. Many times in an asset thing, I really am very interested in how much cash I have available to me at any given time compared to my other things, right? How many assets do I have compared to my liabilities? Because from the outside, boy, I can look like I'm doing real well, but I have crushing debt, crushing liabilities behind me. My business is ready to go out of business at any given time. Believe it or not, that's all I want to cover today. I wanted to go over last time's homework. Don't pack up just yet, please. I wanted to go over last time's homework. I wanted to go over a bit of balance sheet. We're going to finish up balance sheet on, what's today? Tuesday or Thursday. On Tuesday, we'll use Thursday to talk a little more about what's on this final experience. But I would love it if you did that test that's due tomorrow, please. That's it. So you can go unless you have something to ask me about. So goodbye. Do you have a question or it's cool? All right. Bridget, do you have a question or you all set?